The sterile smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils as I sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside my sister's hospital bed. Rain pelted against the windows of Seattle General Hospital, creating a rhythm that matched the beeping of the machines monitoring Rebecca's vital signs. It was 3 in the morning and I hadn't left her side for 12 hours. My back ached from the awkward position I'd been holding, trying to stay close enough to hear if she needed anything, but far enough away to give her space. Rebecca had always been particular about her personal space, even as kids. Especially with me. She stirred slightly, her eyelids fluttering open in the dim light cast by the monitors. For a moment, I thought she might not recognize me through the haze of pain medication, but her eyes focused with that familiar sharpness I'd known my whole life. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed earlier that day. "You're still here." I leaned forward, relief washing over me. "Of course I'm still here. How are you feeling? Do you need water? Should I call the nurse?" She turned her head away from me, staring at the window where the city lights blurred through the rain. The silence stretched between us like it had so many times before. I'd driven 4 hours from Portland the moment I got the call about her accident, dropped everything at my construction site and rushed to be here. But sitting in this room, I felt the familiar weight of our complicated relationship settling on my chest. "You don't have to stay," she said finally, her voice barely audible above the mechanical sounds of the ICU. "I know you probably have work tomorrow." "Work can wait, Becca. You're my sister." She let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. I reached for the water cup, but she waved me away weakly. When the coughing subsided, she looked at me with eyes that seemed older than her 32 years. "Ryan," she whispered, so quietly I had to strain to hear her. "You're a burden." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat back in the chair, feeling like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. After everything, after rushing here, after staying by her side, after caring for her like I always had, this is what she had to say to me. "Becca, you don't understand," she continued, her voice gaining a little strength. "You've always been a burden. Even when we were kids. Mom and Dad, they had to worry about you constantly. Your learning disability, your problems in school, the way you couldn't seem to fit in anywhere. And then later, when you dropped out of college, when you couldn't keep a steady job for years." Each word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. These were things I'd struggled with my whole life, things I'd worked so hard to overcome. Yes, I'd been diagnosed with dyslexia in 3rd grade. Yes, college had been a disaster for me. Yes, it had taken me until I was 25 to find my calling in construction and actually build a stable life. "I never asked for help," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to ask. It was always there, this weight on the whole family. Do you know how many times Mom cried because she worried you'd never be able to take care of yourself? How many family dinners were spent discussing what to do about Ryan, how to help Ryan, whether Ryan would ever figure his life out?" I stared at her, unable to speak. The machines continued their steady beeping, a stark contrast to the chaos in my chest. I thought about all the times I'd felt like an outsider in my own family, how Rebecca had always seemed so effortless in everything she did. Valedictorian in high school, full scholarship to Northwestern, MBA, successful marketing career in Seattle. She'd always been the golden child and I'd always been, what she said, a burden. "The accident," she whispered, closing her eyes. "It should have been me who didn't make it out of that car. Not Tyler." Tyler Morrison had been her fiancé. I'd only met him a few times, but he seemed like a good guy. They'd been planning a wedding for next spring. The drunk driver had hit them head-on 3 nights ago while they were coming back from dinner. Tyler had been killed instantly. Rebecca had been in surgery for 8 hours. "Don't say that," I said quietly. "Don't ever say that." She opened her eyes and looked at me again, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "Why not? It's true. He had everything to live for. A promotion coming up at his firm, plans for us, for a family. What do I have now? What have I ever really contributed to anyone's life except worry and—" "Stop." I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "You don't get to say things like that. Not about yourself and not about me. It's true though, isn't it? We're both just broken. The difference is I hid it better behind achievements and degrees and a fancy job. But underneath, I'm just as lost as you always were." I looked at her lying there, connected to machines, having lost the love of her life, and I realized something I'd never seen before. Rebecca wasn't being cruel. She was drowning, and in her pain she was pulling up every dark thought she'd ever had, including ones about me that maybe weren't even really about me at all. But that didn't make the words hurt any less. "I'm going to get some coffee," I said, grabbing my jacket from the back of the chair. I'll be back in a few minutes. As I walked toward the door, I heard her voice behind me, softer now. Ryan, I didn't mean. But I was already in the hallway, walking quickly toward the elevator. I needed air, space, anything to process what had just happened. The elevator arrived, and I stepped inside with a middle-aged doctor who looked like he'd been awake for days. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Rebecca through her room's window. She was crying, her hand reaching toward the door I'd just walked through. Part of me wanted to go back, to comfort her, to be the brother I'd always tried to be. But another part of me, the part that had just been shattered by her words, needed time to figure out how to breathe again. The elevator descended toward the hospital's main floor, carrying me away from the sister who had just told me I was a burden, and toward a conversation that would change everything I thought I knew about my life. The hospital cafeteria at 3:30 a.m. was a desolate place. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. I sat at a corner table with a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the previous afternoon, staring at the black liquid and replaying Rebecca's words in my head. You're a burden. I'd heard variations of this my whole life, mostly in my own head. The whispered conversations between my parents when they thought I wasn't listening. The way teachers would sigh when they had to explain something to me for the third time. The look in my ex-girlfriend's eyes when she realized that dating someone who struggled with reading meant being patient with restaurant menus and helping fill out forms. But hearing it from Rebecca, especially now, when she was lying in a hospital bed having lost everything that mattered to her, it felt different. Final, somehow. My phone buzzed with a text message. My boss, probably wondering if I'd be back on the job site tomorrow. I was the foreman now, something that would have seemed impossible to the kid who couldn't read his own homework assignments. It had taken me 12 years to work my way up from carrying tools to running crews, but I'd done it. I was good at what I did. My guys respected me. The company trusted me with their biggest projects. But none of that seemed to matter sitting in this hospital cafeteria, remembering every time I'd felt like I didn't belong in my own family. Excuse me, are you Ryan Patterson? I looked up to see a doctor approaching my table. He was probably in his 50s, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that suggested he'd seen more than his share of difficult nights. He wore scrubs and had a stethoscope draped around his neck. Yes, I said, immediately alarmed. Is Rebecca okay? Did something happen? He held up a reassuring hand. Your sister is fine. I'm Dr. James Mitchell. I was actually looking for you because I wanted to speak with you privately, if you have a moment. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. Sure, but I should probably get back to her room soon. Dr. Mitchell sat down and studied my face for a moment. How long have you been here? Since yesterday afternoon. Drove up from Portland as soon as I got the call. He nodded. And you've been staying with her this whole time? Pretty much. I stepped out to get food a couple times, made some phone calls. But yeah, mostly I've been in her room. I paused. What? Is there something I should know about her condition? Actually, Mr. Patterson, I wanted to talk to you about something that happened 6 years ago. Do you remember the summer of 2018? I frowned, trying to think back. 2018? I would have been 26. I was working construction in Portland, just starting to get my life together after some rough years. Why? Do you remember visiting Seattle that summer? Specifically, do you remember visiting Swedish Medical Center? The memory came back slowly, like a photograph developing. Yeah, I remember. Rebecca had been having some health issues. Fatigue, weight loss. She was getting tests done, and I drove up to be there for the results. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. Do you remember what those tests were for? I closed my eyes, trying to recall the details. It had been a stressful time. Rebecca had been scared, though she tried to hide it behind her usual composure. I remembered sitting in a different waiting room in a different hospital, feeling helpless and out of place among all the medical terminology I couldn't fully understand. They thought it might be cancer, I said quietly. But the test came back negative. She was fine. Just stress and overwork, I think the doctor said. Dr. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Mr. Patterson, I was Rebecca's oncologist that summer. My blood went cold. Oncologist? But she didn't have cancer. That's correct. She didn't. But the reason she didn't, the reason those tests came back negative, is more complicated than you might think. He pulled out a tablet and swiped to what looked like medical records. Your sister came to us with some very concerning symptoms. The preliminary test suggested a high probability of a rare form of blood cancer. We needed to do a bone marrow biopsy to confirm, but we also needed to identify potential bone marrow donors in case treatment became necessary. Okay, I said slowly, not understanding where this was going. Family members are typically the best matches for bone marrow donation. We tested you, your parents, and several extended family members. The results were unusual. He turned the tablet toward me, showing a page of numbers and percentages that might as well have been written in a foreign language. Your bone marrow was not just a good match for Rebecca, Mr. Patterson. It was perfect. A 10 out of 10 match, which occurs in less than 1% of sibling pairs. But she didn't need a transplant, I said, confused. The tests came back negative. Dr. Mitchell smiled sadly. That's where the story gets complicated. When we did the bone marrow biopsy on Rebecca, we found something extraordinary. Her bone marrow showed signs of recovery from damage that should have been permanent. Cellular regeneration that we typically only see after successful treatment. I don't understand. Mr. Patterson, in the months leading up to Rebecca's diagnosis, did you donate blood? I thought back. Yeah, actually. There was a blood drive at my work site. I donated a few times that spring. My blood type is O negative, so they always said it was especially needed. And do you remember being called back for additional donations? The memory crystallized suddenly. Yes. They said my blood was particularly good for some reason. They kept asking me to come back, said I had some kind of rare antibodies or something. I thought they were just trying to get more donations out of me. Dr. Mitchell was nodding. Mr. Patterson, you have extremely rare antibodies in your blood. When the blood bank processed your donations that spring, those antibodies made their way to patients who needed them, including your sister. But I never donated blood to Rebecca directly. No, but she received blood products during a minor surgery that March. Routine procedure, but she needed a transfusion. The blood she received came from the general supply, which included your donations. I stared at him, trying to process what he was telling me. Are you saying my blood somehow helped her? I'm saying your blood, with its rare antibodies, gave her immune system the boost it needed to fight off cancer cells before they could fully establish themselves. When we did her biopsy 6 months later, we found evidence of her immune system having successfully battled and defeated cancerous cells. Cells that, without that boost, would likely have developed into the cancer we initially suspected. The cafeteria suddenly felt very quiet. I could hear the hum of vending machines, the distant sound of pages being called over the hospital intercom, but Dr. Mitchell's words seemed to echo in my head. You're telling me that I saved her life? Mr. Patterson, I've been a doctor for 27 years. I've seen medical miracles, lucky breaks, and unexplained recoveries. What happened to your sister wasn't luck. It was the direct result of your blood donation. You saved her life and she never knew it. I sat back in my chair, feeling dizzy. Why didn't you tell us then? Medical privacy laws prevented me from disclosing the source of the blood products. And honestly, at the time, we weren't completely certain about the connection. It's only in recent years, as we've learned more about these particular antibodies, that we've been able to definitively establish the causal relationship. But why are you telling me now? Dr. Mitchell's expression grew more serious. Because your sister is struggling, Mr. Patterson. The trauma of the accident, losing her fiancé, the survivor's guilt, she's in a very dark place emotionally. Her physical injuries will heal, but I'm concerned about her mental state. I thought about her words in the hospital room, about how she'd said it should have been her who died instead of Tyler. She thinks she's worthless, I said quietly. And from what I understand from the nurses, she's been pushing away the one person who's been here for her consistently. You. I looked down at my hands, still processing everything he'd told me. She called me a burden tonight. Said I've been a burden my whole life. Dr. Mitchell was quiet for a moment. Mr. Patterson, I don't know the dynamics of your family and I'm not a psychologist. But I can tell you this. The man who saved his sister's life by simply being generous enough to donate blood when his community needed it is not a burden. The man who drove 4 hours in the middle of the night and has been sitting by her bedside for 12 hours is not a burden. He stood up from the table. I thought you both should know the truth. What you do with this information is up to you, but in my professional opinion, your sister needs to understand that the person she's pushing away is the same person who gave her 6 more years of life. As Dr. Mitchell walked away, I sat alone in the fluorescent-lit cafeteria, holding a truth that changed everything I thought I knew about my place in the world. I wasn't the burden who needed saving, I was the one who had been saving others without even knowing it. But the question remained, how do you tell someone who just called you worthless that you're the reason she's alive? I sat in that hospital cafeteria for another 20 minutes, staring at Dr. Mitchell's business card and trying to wrap my mind around what he'd told me. Every few minutes, I'd pull out my phone to call someone, my parents, my best friend Tony, anyone who might help me process this information. But each time I'd put the phone back down. This wasn't the kind of news you shared over a phone call at 4 in the morning. The elevator ride back to the ICU felt different than it had an hour earlier. The same sterile walls, the same antiseptic smell, but I felt like I was carrying a secret that weighed 1,000 pounds. As I walked down the hallway toward Rebecca's room, I could see through the window that she was awake, staring at the ceiling. I paused outside her door, my hand on the handle. Part of me wanted to burst in and tell her everything Dr. Mitchell had said. Another part of me wondered if this information would make things better or worse. Rebecca had always been proud, fiercely independent. Learning that she owed her life to her burden of a brother might not be the comfort I hoped it would be. I knocked softly and entered the room. Rebecca turned her head toward me, and I could see she'd been crying. "I thought you'd left," she said quietly. "Just went for coffee." I sat back down in the plastic chair, noting that she was watching me more carefully now. "Ryan, about what I said earlier." "Don't?" I held up my hand. "We don't have to do this right now. You're dealing with a lot." She struggled to sit up a bit more, wincing at the movement. "No, we do have to do this. What I said was cruel, and it wasn't fair, and it wasn't even true." I studied her face. "Wasn't it? What do you mean?" "I mean, haven't you always felt that way? That I was the problem child, the one who couldn't get his act together, the one who made everything more difficult for everyone." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. "Ryan, yes. Sometimes I felt that way. But I was wrong." "When did you realize you were wrong?" She seemed surprised by the question. "I don't know. Gradually, I guess. When you started your own crew, when you bought your house, when you got your life together. But honestly, sitting here tonight, watching you sleep in that awful chair, realizing you dropped everything to be here, I think I've been wrong for a long time." I felt something shifting in my chest, like a knot I didn't even know was there beginning to loosen. "Becca, there's something I need to tell you. Something I just learned." She looked at me with concern. "What is it?" I took a deep breath. "Do you remember the summer of 2018? When you were having health problems and getting tested for cancer?" Her face went pale. "Of course I remember. Why? Do you remember the blood transfusion you had that March? From your surgery?" "Vaguely. It was minor surgery, but I lost more blood than expected." "Ryan, why are you asking about this?" I looked down at Dr. Mitchell's business card, then back at my sister. "I just spoke with Dr. Mitchell. He was your oncologist that summer." "Okay. And?" "Becca, the reason your cancer test came back negative wasn't just because you were healthy. It was because your immune system had already fought off cancer cells. Cells that would have killed you if your immune system hadn't gotten help." She stared at me. "Help from what?" "From blood you received in transfusion. Blood with rare antibodies that gave your immune system the boost it needed to fight off the cancer before it could establish itself." Rebecca's heart monitor started beeping a little faster. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that blood came from donations I made that spring. My blood, with antibodies that I didn't even know I had, saved your life 6 years ago." The room was completely silent except for the sound of the machines. Rebecca stared at me with an expression I'd never seen before: shock, disbelief, and something else I couldn't identify. "That's impossible," she whispered. I pulled out my phone and showed her Dr. Mitchell's contact information. "He said you can call him tomorrow to confirm everything. He has all the medical records." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "You saved my life?" "According to him, yeah. Without even knowing it." She was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. I watched her face cycle through different emotions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like grief. "Oh God," she finally said. "Oh God, Ryan. What have I done?" "What do you mean?" "All these years I thought I treated you like you were." She started crying harder. "How could I have been so blind? So cruel?" "Becca, you weren't cruel. You were just being honest about how you felt." "No." The word came out with surprising force. "No, I was being a terrible sister. All those years when you were struggling, when you were trying to figure out your place in the world, I should have been supporting you. Instead, I was judging you, looking down on you, thinking I was better than you because I had good grades and a college degree." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "And all the while you were literally keeping me alive and I didn't even know it. Worse than that, I was treating the person who saved my life like he was a disappointment." I moved my chair closer to her bed. "Rebecca, listen to me. You're not a terrible sister. You're human. And humans sometimes say things they don't mean when they're in pain." "But I did mean it," she said quietly. "That's the terrible part. I really did think you were a burden. I thought our whole family would be better off if you just figured things out and stopped needing so much help and attention. And now," She looked at me with eyes that seemed to see me clearly for the first time in years. Now I think I'm the one who's been a burden. All these years I've been so focused on my achievements, my career, my perfect life plan, that I never bothered to see what kind of man my brother was becoming. I never saw that you were the one taking care of people, helping people, literally saving lives. I'm not a saint, Becca. I was just donating blood. You were donating blood because you cared about helping people. You drove 4 hours to be here because you care about me, even after the way I've treated you. You've been sitting in that horrible chair for 12 hours because you love me, even when I don't deserve it. She reached for my hand and I let her take it. Ryan, I need you to know something. When I said you were a burden tonight, I wasn't really talking about you. I was talking about myself. What do you mean? I mean that lying here, thinking about Tyler, thinking about everything I've lost, I felt like a burden. I felt like the universe made a mistake keeping me alive instead of him. He was such a good person, and I've been selfish and judgmental and focused on all the wrong things. She squeezed my hand. When I said you were a burden, I think I was really saying that I felt like a burden. And maybe I was trying to hurt you because I was hurting so much I couldn't stand it. I felt tears in my own eyes now. Becca, you're not a burden either. Aren't I? What have I ever done for anyone else? What have I ever contributed besides judgments and criticism? You've contributed a lot. You're brilliant, you're successful, you've worked hard for everything you've achieved. And you're going to get through this and you're going to keep contributing. She shook her head. I don't know how to be the person who deserves to have been saved by someone like you. You don't have to earn it, Rebecca. That's not how love works. That's not how family works. We sat in silence for a while, both of us processing everything that had happened in the past few hours. Outside, the Seattle skyline was beginning to show hints of dawn, the rain finally starting to let up. Ryan. Rebecca said finally. Yeah. I'm so sorry. For tonight, for all the years before tonight, for not seeing who you really are. I'm so sorry. I squeezed her hand back. I forgive you, Becca. And I hope you can forgive yourself too. She closed her eyes and for the first time since I'd arrived at the hospital, she looked peaceful. I don't know how, but I want to try. As my sister finally fell asleep, I realized that Dr. Mitchell had been wrong about one thing. I hadn't saved Rebecca's life 6 years ago with my blood donation. I had saved it tonight with the truth. And maybe, in some way I was just beginning to understand she had saved mine too. 3 weeks later, I was back in Rebecca's hospital room, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. She was sitting up in bed, the color back in her cheeks, working on her laptop despite the cast on her left arm. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and she'd convinced one of the nurses to bring her real coffee from the cafe downstairs. The physical therapy is going better than expected, she said, looking up from her screen. Dr. Martinez thinks I'll be ready to start outpatient treatment next week. I was installing grab bars in the bathroom of her Seattle apartment, preparing for her discharge. It felt good to be doing something useful with my hands while we talked. That's great news. And you're still planning to take the extended leave from work? Actually, I have some news about that. She closed her laptop and gave me her full attention. I've decided not to go back to Morrison and Associates. I paused in my work and turned to look at her. Really? But you love that job. I thought I did. But the last 3 weeks have given me a lot of time to think about what I actually want to do with my life. She smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since before the accident. I want to do something that matters. Marketing matters, Becca. Marketing luxury condos to rich people doesn't matter. Not in the way I want my work to matter. She shifted in her bed, getting more comfortable. Do you remember what Dr. Mitchell told us about bone marrow donation and rare blood types? Yeah, of course. Well, I've been researching it, and there are thousands of people who die every year because they can't find matching donors. People with rare blood types, people from minority ethnic backgrounds, people whose families don't know about donation programs. I could see where this was going and I felt a surge of pride for my sister. You want to work in that field. I want to use my marketing skills to create awareness programs. I want to help people understand that donating blood or registering as a bone marrow donor isn't just some abstract good deed, it's literally the difference between life and death for specific people. She pulled up something on her laptop and turned it toward me. I've been in touch with the National Bone Marrow Registry, and they're interested in hiring me to redesign their outreach programs. The pay is about 60% of what I was making before, but Ryan, I can't think of anything I'd rather do with my life. I finished installing the grab bar and walked over to sit in what had become my usual chair. That sounds amazing, Rebecca. Really amazing. There's something else, she said, her tone becoming more serious. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our family, about the things I said to you that night. Becca, we've talked about this. You were in pain, you were grieving. Let me finish. She held up her hand. I know we've talked about it and I know you've forgiven me. But I need to do more than just apologize. I need to make things right. She reached into the bedside table and pulled out a folder. I've been working on something. What kind of something? A project. About you, actually. She opened the folder and showed me what looked like a business plan. Ryan, you're an incredible foreman, but you're working for someone else's company. You're making other people rich with your skills and your leadership. I looked at the paper she was showing me. There were financial projections, market analyses, and what looked like loan applications. I don't understand. I want to help you start your own construction company. I've run all the numbers, identified potential clients, even researched the best business structure for tax purposes. She looked up at me with excitement in her eyes. Patterson Construction could be a real thing, Ryan. You could be your own boss, hire your own crews, take on the projects you believe in. I stared at the folder, overwhelmed. Becca, this is incredible work. But I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything. I'm asking you to let me invest in your future. I have savings, Ryan. More savings than I know what to do with, actually. And I can't think of a better investment than my brother's dreams. But what if it fails? What if I'm not ready for this kind of responsibility? Rebecca laughed, and it was a sound I realized I'd missed more than I knew. Ryan, you've been managing crews of 12 guys for 3 years. You've brought every project in on time and under budget. Your boss trusts you with million-dollar builds. The only person who doesn't believe you're ready for this is you. I looked through the business plan she'd prepared. It was incredibly thorough, professional, and clearly represented hours of research and analysis. When did you have time to do all this? Turns out lying in a hospital bed gives you a lot of time to think about what's really important. She took my hand. Ryan, for most of my life I've been focused on my own success, my own achievements. But sitting here, knowing that you saved my life, seeing how you've taken care of me through this whole ordeal, I realized that the most successful thing I could ever do is help the people I love achieve their dreams. Are you sure about this? Starting a business is risky, and you're already making a big change with your career. I'm sure. She squeezed my hand. But I have one condition. What's that? I want to be your first client. I looked at her confused. What do you mean? I mean, I want to hire Patterson Construction to build something. Something meaningful. She pulled up another document on her laptop. I've been looking at properties and I found the perfect lot. It's in South Seattle, in a neighborhood that could really use some investment. She showed me photos of an empty lot in what looked like a working-class area. I want to build a community center. Nothing fancy, just a solid building with space for blood drives, health education programs, maybe some after-school programs for kids. I want to fund it and I want you to build it. I looked at the photos, then back at my sister. Rebecca, that would be amazing. I know we can't bring Tyler back, she said quietly. But maybe we can honor his memory by creating something that helps people, something that brings communities together. And maybe in the process, we can show the world what the Patterson siblings can accomplish when they work together instead of apart. I felt tears in my eyes, but they were different tears than the ones I'd cried in this room 3 weeks ago. These were tears of hope, of possibility, of a future I'd never imagined. There's one more thing, Rebecca said. I've already talked to Mom and Dad about all of this, about what happened with the blood donation, about our conversation that night, about these new plans. What did they say? Dad cried. I've never seen Dad cry before. She wiped her own eyes. And Mom said something that really stuck with me. She said she always knew you were special, but she worried that the world wouldn't recognize it because you didn't fit into traditional definitions of success. And now she says she can't wait to see what Patterson Construction builds for the world. I looked around the hospital room that had been the site of both the worst and best conversations of my life. In 3 weeks, everything had changed. Rebecca was healing both physically and emotionally. I was about to embark on the biggest professional challenge of my life. And our relationship, which had been strained by years of misunderstanding and unspoken resentment, was stronger than it had ever been. There's something I need to tell you too, I said. What's that? The night you called me a burden, part of me believed it. Part of me had always believed it. But sitting here with you now, looking at everything you've prepared, seeing how you want to use your talents to help other people, I realized that we were both wrong about ourselves. What do you mean? I mean, I was wrong to think I was a burden, and you were wrong to think you were selfish. The truth is, we're both people who care about others, who want to make a difference. We just got lost for a while in our own insecurities and assumptions. Rebecca nodded. And now? Now I think we're exactly where we're supposed to be. A nurse knocked on the door and entered with discharge papers. Miss Patterson? Dr. Martinez is ready to go over your release instructions. As Rebecca gathered her things and prepared to leave the hospital, I realized that this room had become something like sacred space for us. It was where we'd told each other the truth, where we'd hurt each other and forgiven each other, where we'd discovered that the story we'd been telling ourselves about our family was completely wrong. Ready to go home, Becca? She looked around the room one more time, then back at me. Ready to go home, ready to start Patterson Construction, ready to build something meaningful together. She paused. Ready to be the sister you deserve to have. Ready to be the brother you deserve to have too. As we left Seattle General Hospital together, I thought about Dr. Mitchell's words from that night 3 weeks ago. He'd said that I had saved Rebecca's life with my blood donation, but I knew now that the real saving had happened in that hospital room when we finally told each other the truth. 6 months later, I stood in the parking lot of what would soon be the South Seattle Community Health Center, watching my crew put the finishing touches on the building's exterior. The morning sun cast long shadows across the freshly poured sidewalks, and I could see Rebecca inside through the large windows, directing the installation of equipment for the center's first blood drive. "Boss, we're ready for the final inspection," called out Miguel, my lead carpenter and one of the first people I'd hired when Patterson Construction officially opened for business. I walked through the building one more time, checking every detail. The main hall where blood drives would be held was spacious and welcoming, with natural light flooding in from skylights I'd insisted on installing. The education rooms were equipped with the latest technology for health awareness programs. The children's area was colorful and safe, designed to be a place where kids could learn about helping others while their parents participated in community health initiatives. But my favorite part was the small plaque Rebecca had commissioned for the entrance hall. It read, "In memory of Tyler Morrison, and in celebration of the truth that every act of giving creates ripples of hope we may never see. What do you think?" Rebecca appeared beside me, her arm finally free of the cast she'd worn for 2 months. "I think Tyler would be proud," I said. She nodded, her eyes bright with tears she didn't try to hide anymore. "I think so too." The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of challenges and discoveries. Starting Patterson Construction had been everything Rebecca's business plan had predicted. Difficult, rewarding, terrifying, and ultimately successful. We'd faced permit delays, supply chain issues, and the normal growing pains of any new business. But we'd also landed 3 additional contracts before this building was even finished, and I had a waiting list of skilled workers who wanted to join our team. More importantly, Rebecca had thrown herself into her new career with the National Bone Marrow Registry with the same intensity she'd once brought to marketing luxury condos. In 6 months, her awareness campaigns had resulted in a 40% increase in new donor registrations in the Pacific Northwest. "Have you heard from Dr. Mitchell lately?" I asked. "Actually, yes. He's going to be at the opening ceremony next week. He wanted me to tell you that your blood is still saving lives." I'd continued donating blood regularly, but now I understood the impact of what I was doing. The Red Cross had connected me with 3 families whose loved ones had received my blood products over the years. One was a car accident victim in Portland. Another was a woman who'd survived complications during childbirth. The third was a child with a rare bleeding disorder who needed regular transfusions. "It's strange," I said, looking out at the community center we'd built together. "A year ago, I thought I was just a guy who couldn't read very well and had to work twice as hard as everyone else to get by. And now I realize that all those struggles, all those years of feeling like I didn't fit in anywhere, they were preparing me for something I couldn't have imagined. Not just running my own company but understanding what it feels like to be overlooked, underestimated. It makes me better at seeing potential in other people." Rebecca smiled. "Like Miguel? The guy you hired even though he didn't have formal carpentry training?" I looked through the window at Miguel, who was now teaching a younger crew member how to install crown molding with the precision of a master craftsman. "Like Miguel. Like half my crew actually. Turns out some of the best workers are people who just needed someone to believe in them." "Sounds familiar," Rebecca said. "Our parents arrived as we were doing the final walkthrough. Mom immediately started crying when she saw the finished building, and Dad spent 20 minutes examining the craftsmanship with the eye of someone who'd worked with his hands his whole life. "I'm proud of you both," he said finally, pulling Rebecca and me into a hug. "But I want you to know I was always proud of you. Both of you." Sometimes parents worry so much about helping their kids succeed that they forget to tell them how much they're already valued. "Dad," I started to say, but he held up his hand. Let me finish. Ryan, I spent so many years worrying about whether you'd be okay, whether you'd find your place in the world, that I never told you enough how impressed I was by your determination, your kindness, your willingness to keep trying even when things were hard. He turned to Rebecca. And Rebecca, I was so proud of your achievements that I never told you how much I admired your intelligence and your drive. But I also never helped you understand that success isn't just about grades or job titles. It's about the kind of person you choose to be. Mom wiped her eyes. What your father is trying to say is that we love you both exactly as you are, and we're excited to see what you build together. The opening ceremony for the South Seattle Community Health Center was held on a sunny Saturday morning in October. The mayor was there, along with representatives from the Red Cross, the National Bone Marrow Registry, and several community organizations. But the people I was happiest to see were the families from the neighborhood, parents with children, elderly residents, teenagers who'd volunteered to help with the setup. Dr. Mitchell spoke about the importance of community health initiatives and the lives that could be saved through simple acts of donation. Rebecca gave a presentation about the center's programs and future plans. The mayor cut a ribbon and posed for photos. But the moment that meant the most to me happened after the formal ceremony, when I was talking with Mrs. Garcia, whose grandson attended the elementary school across the street. Mijo, she said, taking my hand in both of hers. This building, it's going to change things for our neighborhood. Not just the blood drives and the health programs, but knowing that someone cared enough about us to build something this beautiful here. As the day wound down and the crowds dispersed, Rebecca and I stood in the main hall of the community center, watching the cleanup crew work around us. Any regrets? I asked. She thought about it for a moment. About leaving my old job? About using my savings to fund this project? About completely changing the direction of my life? Yeah, all of that. None at all, she said without hesitation. This year has been the hardest and the best year of my life. I finally feel like I'm doing work that matters, like I'm the person I was meant to be. Even after everything that happened? Losing Tyler, the accident, all of it? Her expression grew more serious. Ryan, I would give anything to have Tyler back. But I can't change what happened. What I can do is make sure that his death and my survival mean something. Building this center, working with the Bone Marrow Registry, helping you start your company, these things honor his memory and honor the gift of life you gave me. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the late afternoon sunlight stream through the windows of the building we'd created together. There's something I've been wanting to ask you, Rebecca said finally. What's that? That night in the hospital, when I said you were a burden, did you ever really believe it? I considered the question carefully. Honestly, part of me did. Maybe part of me always had. But I think the real burden wasn't me being difficult or struggling with things. The real burden was the story we all told ourselves about what success looks like, what value looks like. What do you mean? I mean, we measured worth by grades and degrees and traditional achievements. We never stopped to consider that maybe the kid who struggled in school might grow up to be someone who could build communities, or that the person who took longer to find their path might be exactly the right person to help others find theirs. Rebecca nodded. And I think I used judgment and criticism as a way to avoid looking at my own insecurities. It was easier to focus on what I saw as your problems than to examine whether my own definition of success was actually making me happy. As we prepared to lock up the community center for the night, I realized that Dr. Mitchell had been right about something else. The conversation that had started with pain and harsh words had ultimately become the foundation for healing, not just for Rebecca and me, but for our whole understanding of family, success, and what it means to save someone's life. Ready to go home, Becca? She looked around the building one more time at the space where hundreds of people would come to donate blood, learn about health, and support each other in the years ahead. Ready to go home, she said. And ready to keep building. As we walked out into the October evening, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, from a hospital room where hurtful words had shattered old assumptions, to this community center where healing would happen every day. Sometimes saving someone's life is as simple as donating blood without expecting anything in return. But sometimes it's as complex as learning to see each other clearly, to tell the truth even when it's difficult, and to build something beautiful from the rubble of old mistakes. Both kinds of saving, I'd learned, require the same thing. The willingness to give something of yourself for someone else, trusting that love and generosity create more value in the world than any individual achievement ever could. The story of Rebecca and me wasn't finished. We had more buildings to construct, more lives to touch, more ways to discover what it really means to be family. But as we drove through the streets of Seattle toward home, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together as brother and sister, as business partners, as people who had learned that the greatest burden you can carry is the assumption that you're not worthy of love, and the greatest gift you can give is helping someone set that burden down. In the end, that's what saving a life really means: helping someone understand that they matter, that they belong, that the world is better because they're in it. And if you're very lucky, they'll help you understand the same thing about yourself.